The Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA, says that it's ready for the much-anticipated auction of International Mobile Telecommunications, that's IMT, also referred to as high-demand spectrum, starting today following the recent announcement of the 6 bidders for the auction. Now, the radio frequency spectrum in the 700, 800 and 2,600 megahertz and 3,500 bands is made available through this licensing process. And it is, of course, for the purposes of providing national broadband wireless access services to all South Africans. And ICASA says that the importance of this licensing process lies mainly in the enhancement of competition in the mobile services sector and also increasing broadband connectivity and coverage, as well as bridging the digital divide between urban and rural access to mobile broadband networks. Now, to help us unpack better and get a more of a sense of what this means, we have invited ICASA chairperson, Dr. Kiabetswe Mudimueng. Thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you for inviting us, and greetings to the viewers.
So, Dr. Mudimueng, I can imagine some of our viewers sitting there thinking, what is she talking about? So can we just start by simplifying for some of our viewers what exactly is going on with regard to the auction, and what is this meant to mean for the person on the street?
Thank you. Indeed, it's a great day. It's been many years coming in the making. Today, ICASA will commence with the spectrum auction. Now, spectrum in simple terms are the raw networks or the raw capacity with which mobile network operators are able to, provide network services and coverage to consumers. So for a mobile network operator to be able to render connectivity, they are squarely dependent on spectrum availability. Now, these airwaves are then allocated to the network mobile operator so that they will be able to deploy. In the past, there has been spectrum assignments, but these assignments were done administratively. It was not through an auction. But this time around, because we have, as you have said, 6 applicants in this regard: Vodacom, MTN, Cell C, Telkom, Liquid Intelligent Technologies, as well as RAIN. It requires an auction as the most transparent, fair method of allocation. The operator who needs it the most will then pay for it. This spectrum belongs to the people of South Africa. So as ICASA, we are just, providing a service on the allocation thereof. It's a license that will last a period of about 20 years. So we will then, as a result of this particular licensing, start to see, the improvement in the user experience, the speed from a broadband connectivity point of view. When using our devices, we will start to see improved voice call quality. We will start to see improved reach in the outflung areas in our country. So the spectrum release is a direct way of dealing with also bridging the digital divide. Let the unconnected be connected. And we have also imposed obligations as part of these new spectrum licenses. Over 500 police stations across the country will be connected. Over 18,000 public schools will be connected. Over 1,800 government hospitals and close to 4,000 government clinics will be connected. This is a way of ushering in, e-health, telemedicine as well. So what we are effectively saying, having learned from COVID as well, is that there is a serious divide. There is a difference for those in urban areas and those in rural settings. If you want to work virtually, from an underserved area, an underserved community in certain parts of our country, you cannot because of the quality of network. So there are very stringent obligations linked to this licensing regime.
So, Dr. Mudimueng, with regard to the bidders here, who is actually going to be bidding for these frequencies?
Yes, so it's the 6 operators. I can repeat: Vodacom, MTN, Cell C, Rain, Liquid, Intelligent Technologies, as well as Cell C. So they have all applied. We've done the pre-qualification stage. They all succeeded in the pre-qualification stage. Last week we held a bidder seminar. It was successful. They participated, and today is the commencement of the official auction at ICASA.
So with regard to those bidders, why only them? And just how broad was this particular process in identifying these bidders?
Thank you. No, indeed, we issued an invitation to apply with, the minimum requirements for entry, application fees, and so forth. And out of that process, these 6 met the criteria. I think we need to understand that from inception, we had a 2-pronged approach, which is this spectrum auction. And from a transformation point of view, there was what we call the wireless open access network. So that one will come. We are still enhancing its business case. But now on the auction side, we have a lot of network service licensees. But our sector all over the world, it's not a South African issue, it's capital intense. Now, we also need to come up with selection criteria that would enable that those who bid for the spectrum, acquire it, will render services. Because we have seen in the broadcasting space, even in the telco space, where people have licenses, but they do not. They just sit on spectrum and do not render or roll out services. And that directly, affects consumers and the public negatively, because spectrum is very scarce. We need to be certain that whoever acquires it will definitely put it to best use. But it was an open process. Anyone with a network service license could apply. But of course, there was, an application fee, and as I've said, a particular criteria which we outlined publicly, and which then applicants had to adhere to.
So you've also said as ICASA that the importance of this licensing process lies mainly in the enhancement of competition in the mobile service sector. And again, consumers would be asking, is this really going to happen? Because we know of what's happened in the past with service providers, where it seems that there is, whether intentionally or unintentionally, it almost seems as though there's collusion when it comes to pricing. So how is this going to differentiate from what we've had before?
Yeah, so with spectrum scarcity, operators are constrained. It's a fact. And that is why, even as the regulator, we've been hard-pressed to try and enforce meaningful regulatory interventions at the cost level. But once spectrum is released, it means now they have more capacity to roll out services. It means, the input cost per megabyte generation is a bit better than what it is when the system is constrained as it has been. Now, with all other regulatory interventions we've been making in the past, through the amendment of the end user, the issues of data expiry and so forth, at least now at this point, we know that once spectrum is released, there would be fewer, if at all, excuses on why there is no meaningful reduction in the cost to communicate. So whether it will happen or not, it will happen because these are obligations. As I've said, the bulk of what I'm saying are obligations contained in our invitation to apply. And we will be, continuously working on all possible ways and means to effect not only cost, but the user experience as well. Reduction in drop calls, underserved and unconnected areas, which by now should have really been connected. So we will be in a better position to enforce regulations and to make meaningful changes on the back of this spectrum licensing process.
And what about the litigation that was brought against ICASA by Telkom? Has that been sorted out?
Yes. So Telkom lodged the court papers in the beginning of the year, around the 5th of January. It was Part A and Part B. Part A was an entered interdict and Part B was the substantive argument. Then Telkom later withdrew Part A. So they said they are withdrawing the interdict. They will just want adjudication of Part B. So Part B has been set for April or so. So the litigation is still active. However, we are of a strong view, also given the number of participants in this litigation who are in support of ICASA, who are opposing Telkom. We are of a strong view that we should be able to indeed see it through. So there is an active litigation, but Telkom is also participating in the auction. It's an important point to note that Telkom is a participant in the auction, and they have subjected themselves to all the auction rules. They are cooperative. So I think with time, through the passage of time, we should be able to appeal to the conscience of our licensee, our operator, Telkom, so that we can all put our spirit of patriotism, our spirit of public interest, the benefit of South Africans ahead of anything else.
And from the sentiments that you've just expressed, Dr. Mundi-Moeng, it would seem as though you are hoping that Telkom would therefore display the sort of patriotism that you are appealing for. But could that active litigation not scupper, things going forward? Because the auction starts today, but with that active litigation, what would be the implications if Telkom won?
Yeah, look, we are in a constitutional democracy. In our country, when people are aggrieved at any time, they approach a competent court of law. So litigation would be, of course, a worrying factor. But as I've said, even Telkom themselves are participating here. So we'll go to the High Court. The matter will be adjudicated. If the outcome is not such that the authority, ICASA, believes it's in the best interest of South Africans, we will take the matter through until the very last day. But we cannot be, demobilized by threats of litigation, because once that happens, it's a regulator here dealing with, operators, licensees with multi-billion rand turnovers. So the filing of court papers on its own cannot be a reason why we fold our arms as a regulator. We will be failing South Africans because we are their last line of defense. If ICASA just folds its arms and looks the other way, there is no one who will do anything about it. So we need to make sure that to the very last day, it's been close to 15 years in the making. The fact that in the next hour, the auction is formally commencing shows what resilience, what persistence can achieve. And we will take the same approach, the same attitude to the litigation matter.
Fair enough, that explanation, Dr. Mundi-Moeng. But my question is, what are the implications on today's process if Telkom wins that litigation?
Yes, Telkom abandoned the urgent interdict. They, on their own volition, abandoned. They could have interdicted us as they have done before. They filed papers, they withdrew papers on their own. Okay. Now, where we are right now is that we are proceeding with the auction. There is no interdict against the auction. That is why Telkom is participating in the auction. The adjudication of Telkom's dispute will happen when the auction would have long concluded. The auction is starting today. It might last a week, it might last 2 weeks or 3 weeks at most. And once it concludes, we wrap up, we issue licenses, and we proceed with our lives because there is no interdict. So indeed, there would be a legal review. We will go there, and as I've said, it's Telkom and one other player, vis-a-vis ICASA, Minister of Communication and Digital Technology, Vodacom, MTN, RAID. All these parties that I'm mentioning are opposing this litigation. So it gives you an indication that even just on a balance of probabilities, there are many voices, informal court proceedings, who are saying, let us allow the ICASA process to conclude to its desired logical conclusion.
Dr. Modimueng, this spectrum auction that gets underway today, now, is this likely to satisfy, at least in the immediate term, the need for wireless broadband spectrum in South Africa at the moment?
Indeed, because the bulk of the spectrum that we are auctioning, we had provisionally or temporarily assigned it under the hard lockdown period. You would recall where we said to try and ease congestion. So it was a good, a test case. So once the licenses are issued, our operators have acquired, in our understanding, the necessary equipment and so forth to roll out services as soon as possible. So I don't think once the auction is concluded, all the administrative processes are done and licenses are issued, I don't think there will be a big time lapse between that period and the improvement in our user experience and societal benefits.
And also just in terms of going forward, and we've seen this happen in other countries, in terms of the administrative provisions, will the losers in this instance, as an example, will they be able to further curtail the process by challenging the process in the courts again?
Yeah, Zakina, we were at the Mobile World Congress last week, and I had a meeting with our counterparts from the FCC, the regulator in the US. And one of the things that the chairwoman said to me was, you should know that whatever you are dealing with in South Africa of litigation is a global phenomenon. It is a fact. You can even look at the electricity energy regulator. They are always in court with Eskom and other role players. This is a litigious space. So to answer your question directly, there is a huge possibility that someone who's aggrieved will still approach a competent court of law. That's the reality of a constitutional democracy. And as I have said, as ICASA, we then took a conscious decision that the filing of court papers on its own, or even a loss at first or second instance in a court of law, should not be a deterrent from us doing our work, because future generations will look back and say, but what did ICASA expect? People have liberties, people have franchise, organizations have rights in our country. If they are not happy, they will go to court. So we are doing the best to be as clinical as possible to ensure that this auction goes ahead properly in a fair, ethical, transparent manner. But should anyone be aggrieved, there is nothing that, you and I, it's only moral suasion, but there's nothing else we can do to try and request that people shouldn't go to court, organizations, companies shouldn't approach court. That one is beyond our control. What is within our control as ICASA, as a Schedule 1 PFMA institution, as a Chapter 9 institution in the Constitution of the Republic, is to defend public interest at every opportunity we have. And that's why that's what we have been doing, and that is why we are where we are today, after so many years, so many legal hurdles. I don't know how many affidavits I've disposed. So it's a reality of where we are, but we will not tire until South Africa is competitive. South Africa is, enjoying the full benefits of the fourth industrial revolution, and the lives of our people are changing.
And how much is government, ICASA, hoping to raise through this particular auction, Dr. Modimueng?
Thanks. So we have a cumulative reserve. Should all the lot be subscribed for when the auction starts, we should already be starting on a minimum of 8 billion rands, just as a minimum. But due to the high demand, as bidders start going back and forth, the price might go up. I don't know to which figure, but at least we know, should all the lots be subscribed for at the commencement or during the life of the auction, we are looking at anything north of 8 billion rands, which will then go into our national fiscus to try and assist, as we all know, the reality, the economic constraints in the country.
And just finally, the process of the auction today, how is it going to unfold?
Yes, so So as I've said, bidders have been taken through the process during the bidder seminar last week. So they already are familiar with the auction rules. So once the simultaneous round auction method, once it commences, bidders will start expressing further interest on which particular spectrum lots they are interested in participating on, and then we will start collating issues of cost to say, if this one has bid so much, if you are really interested, are you then able to bid a higher amount? That's how an auction would ordinarily work.
Dr. Modimoeng, thanks so much for your time, and no doubt we'll catch up with you to see how everything panned out today and how much was ultimately raised. And that was ICASA chairperson, Dr. Kiabitswe Modimoeng.